Welcome to For Book Lovers Only Television, your source for in-depth author interviews. For Book Lovers Only Television is a proud member of the Village Connector Media Network. If you love books, we have a home for you. Now time for your host and chief book lover, Rob Brown.
Hello, book lovers and book fans, and welcome to For Book Lovers Only Television, where if you love books, we have a home for you. My name is Rob Brown, your internet television host and chief book lover. Today we have a very distinguished guest in our studios. He is a U.S. Naval Academy graduate, a naval combat aviator who's held several positions, senior staff positions in Washington, D.C. Now, after he retired from the military, he held several positions in aerospace systems engineering in Fortune 500 companies. He's written a book, Leaders Are Made, Not Born. We want to welcome to our studios Dr. Michael Farlow. Here at For Book Lovers Only, we really roll out the red carpet for our veterans, so I want to thank you so much for your service.
Yeah.
So, your book, Leaders Are Made, Not Born, 40 Simple Skills to Make You the Leader You Want to Be. Tell us, what motivated you to write the book?
Well, actually, that book was in preparation for a long time. Probably 8 years before I actually wrote it in various forms. Leadership has always been of interest to me, and one of the last companies I was in, I observed people failing because their leadership skills weren't keeping pace with their advancement in the company. So I said, okay, I'll drag this old outline out. It was 41 pages long, and started to work on it. And that time also I went back to school, got a PhD in organizational leadership, and that gave me some more impetus to finish it off, and gave me a better background. I thought I knew a lot about it when I started the outline, but found that after going through the PhD program that, well, I didn't know quite as much as I thought. So the combination of watching people fail and wanting to make a difference in their lives, I think, is the primary emphasis for doing it.
I see. I want to kind of go back a little bit. You know, obviously, as a Naval Academy graduate, that's a tremendous accomplishment. You know, very few people can do that. What did you learn about leadership at the Naval Academy and then as a combat fighter pilot in the U.S. Navy?
At the Academy, at least at the time, as you progress through your various years, plebe year, which is the freshman year, your first class year, you're given increasing levels of leadership within the brigade. And you learn the sense of responsibility. You learn a sense of importance in what you're involved in, and wanting to make sure that you and your team do not only what's right, but that you accomplish what it is you wanted to accomplish. So the Naval Academy gave us a fairly good ground for those kinds of things. Then you have to get out in the real world and actually practice them. And that's what my time in the Navy taught me. I made mistakes. I learned from them. I got my butt chewed more than once for things that I didn't, and I learned from those. So I think that when I finally got out into the private sector, I told some of my friends that I said, you know, we're really prepared for this. I mean, the competition within our organizations didn't seem like very much because we had such a head start in that regard.
That's a really intriguing. So when you made the transition from the Naval Academy to being in the fleet in the Navy and then from Fortune 500, did you see some of the same challenges with regards to leadership in the civilian and corporate world as well?
Yeah, actually more challenge, because the environment within the most of business communities is less structured than we have experienced while we were in the Navy. And managers, and I say that on purpose because managers aren't necessarily leaders, tend not to have any of those skills, and didn't do the kinds of development things that they needed to do with their people, didn't help them along. And as a matter of fact, some of the statistics show that over 50% of the people who leave a company leave because of management and how they're dealt with. So I found that there were many more people in the private sector who didn't have the experience that I had or the motivations that I had to do what I was doing.
Great. That's really intriguing. So I want to get into the book because I find the topic of leadership just really interesting topic. And obviously, you know, from your skills and expertise, you are uniquely qualified to talk about this. What was your design? What was your plan for the book?
As I said, I started off with this idea and a big long outline. And as I was going through, I just wanted to initially have a series of chapters on a particular aspect of leadership. And there are lots of them. This book has 40. It sounds like a lot, but I probably could add a few more. But when I got into it, I realized that it's not enough just to talk about it. You have to probably give some examples. So that started to grow the book itself. Each section now has an example of what I'm talking about. It then has some questions that people can ask themselves. And then I have a list of things that they can actually do. So it became more than just a reading element. It came with examples, questions, and a kind of a roadmap for that particular topic. So it took on a bigger scale, I think, than when I started out.
That had to be a welcome surprise because it's always better to have more than less.
Oh yeah. I tend to be pretty short in what I write, and I did that on purpose because I wanted people to have something they could look at, read quickly, get something from it, and move on to the next topic. So I think that each section is only like 1,300 words. That's not very many to have all of those things in it. So it's, the people who have had it and read it say, well, it's a quick and easy read. And that was my intent.
Okay. And how do you and others use the book?
Well, I use it. I'm a leadership coach as part of my business, and I'll use the book. Each client gets a book, and I'll refer to it depending upon what their particular needs are. I may refer to it and I say, let's go to chapter so and so and talk about this subject because I think you need work on that. And so it offers me a way of giving them something to look at, to think about. I might give them homework,
right?
You know, for I want you to read chapters, whatever it happens to be. Then I found out that people were who bought the book were buying it in numbers. I mean, not huge numbers, but they were buying it as group training kind of device, where they, in one case, a large company, would buy some of them for a lunch and learn kind of thing, where every week or so they'd get together and they'd go through some of the chapters, talk about it amongst themselves. So it turned out to be, another company bought it specifically as as their leadership program, which I hadn't anticipated. So it's actually being used not just as a personal source of information, but as a group source of information in a development process.
Yeah, it sounds like a tremendous training tool in and of itself. When I want to talk to you about a couple of the 40 simple skills that you mentioned in the book, I want to start out with the very first one. You have to want to be a leader. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, when you're in the business world, you watch people who want to progress, but they'd like to progress because there's more money in it. You know, and so they'll say, well, I want to be the supervisor, the manager, the director, or what it is. But what they have in mind is, I make more money by doing that, and I have some prestige. They don't think about the problems associated or the challenges associated with that when they take on those roles. And many times they get in there and they don't perform well, and they'll get fired. One of the companies I worked for, was there 3 years. There were 12 directors and 3 vice presidents. When I left 3 years later, only one of those people was there, a director. They need to have the real desire to be a leader and understand what it's all about. It's not about money. It's not about the ego. It's what I tell people. It's all about making a difference in people's lives. And if they don't have that kind of ambition or desire, then I don't think it's the right path for them.
So people who want to be a leader, if their primary motivation for wanting to be a leader is monetary, then they probably should kind of check themselves and say, you know, what is...
Absolutely. That's not real motivation. If your leadership skills are good, this is something you want to do and you're able to do it, all of those things will come. You won't have to play too many political games, but it's better for you, it's better for the people around you.
Now, for the second simple skill out of the 40, you mentioned that a person needs to have a vision.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, somebody once said, if you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. So if you're going to help direct the path of a group of people, it would help to know where you're going to go, and the vision is, it might be a particular task on the lower level. Right. I know what this task is. I know what needs to be done about that. I know what it's supposed to look like at the end, and everything that's associated with it, and then help those people to get there. From a larger level, like an executive level or even an entrepreneurial level, you have to look out into the future and say, where do I want to be? What do I want? And in my coaching business, I call that point B. What is it out there that you want to be? And then I'll ask them some questions like, what are the roadblocks in getting there? That's part of the leadership coaching program. But if you don't know where you're going or what it's going to look like when you get there, then I don't see how you can be that much of a success, nor do I think you can be a reasonable leader, because you don't know where you're going.
Now, towards the end of the book, one of the latter part of the book, when you continue to talk about the 40 simple skills, you mentioned empathy.
Right.
That's interesting. You would never think that like empathy would be a natural part of leadership. Obviously it is, but it's not the first thing that comes to mind.
No,
Tell us about empathy.
Yeah, I think that when many people think about empathy, they think about sympathy, and it's not. Sympathy has a kind of a bad connotation in the business world, a kind of a weepy sort of an outlook. But empathy basically is putting yourself in the other person's shoes, understanding what motivates people, why they're doing what they're doing, so that either you can use that as a leverage position, or that you can help direct them, or you understand why it is that they do those things. In most of the studies that I went through when I was doing my PhD work, when you look at the various emotional intelligence elements in the model that I use, which is the Baron model, there are 15. The number one element in emotional intelligence that emerges is empathy for those people whose success you can predict. And as a leader, and if you don't understand people or want to look at why they do things and how they do things, then you're going to have some significant problems. So empathy from an emotional intelligence perspective is the number one factor, I think, in being successful.
Now, from the very topic of your book, leaders are made, not born, there are probably a lot of people that may disagree with you and say, well, no, some people are born leaders. Like, tell us about that, because you hear that a lot. Oh, she's a born leader, he's a born leader. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, and I did that on purpose, because there's a lot of talk out there, but I think the science has pretty much come to the conclusion that there's nothing innate within human beings that causes them to be leaders. For example, you would expect if somebody says you're born with it, there are some genes associated with leadership. The Genome Project finally determined that there are probably about 25,000 genes in the human body. And that's enough to do the basics, whether you're male or female, or you're going to be tall or short or whatever. But to suspect that even traits, for example, or emotional intelligence elements would have a gene for them is just not realistic. There aren't enough of them to make that happen. When you read the literature,
right.
They aren't there. So there's nothing in science that suggests or shows or proves or anything that there's anything innate about leadership. Just not. So what we become is largely a function of how we grew up, the things we experienced, things that we enjoyed or not enjoyed, and so forth, things like that. And it's through those kinds of experiences over life and development activities, training if you want, which leads people down a leadership path if they want to go there.
Well, I think the book is particularly encouraging because, you know, if the only way you could be a leader was to be born a leader, then if you don't feel like you're born a leader, then it's some will feel like a hopelessness.
I think
almost.
There would be awfully few of them, wouldn't
right.
there? In fact, theoretically, there wouldn't be any because there's no genetic basis for it.
Right.
So, yeah. I noticed that I said something. I said training, and I didn't. It's not a word that I like to use. I like to use development, because people have, especially in the business world, the idea that training is sitting in a classroom, for an hour or 2 hours, having somebody talk to you, and there's something to that. But development goes beyond that. It goes into dealing with people on an everyday basis, being empathetic, helping them to do what they do in the real workplace. There are obviously some courses and classwork that you could do. The key is, though, to follow up. People come to me often and say, well, will you come and have some training in our company? And I said, only on one condition. Oh, what's that? That I come back in 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days to talk about how it worked. Did they have some problems? What did they experience? So that they can take the things that they learned and repeat them over time, learn about them, and talk to them again. That's development. The standard kind of training, which is an hour in a classroom, not very exciting for me.
Right, because there's like really no follow-up, and then it's just like, here's the information, you're on your own, but you follow up with your clients.
Yep.
So, with regards to leaders and leadership, obviously, we can talk about political leaders, military leaders, leaders in finance. How can the 40 simple skills be used in other areas? Let's say if someone wanted to be a leader in their community, or a leader in their church or a civic organization, how can those 40 simple skills be used there? I
don't think that it's any different. If you want to get involved in the community, you have to want to get involved in the community. It makes sense. If somebody pushes you out the door and say, go down and be on the Chamber of Commerce and something like that, but I don't want to, then you're not going to be very good at it. So the same things apply. You have to want to do those things. Then you have to understand what it is that this organization or community is doing. In other words, what's their vision and what's my vision inside that to get there. So all of the things that are in the book apply to not just businesses and organizations, but anything you want to do. It's written in the tone of business, but it works anywhere.
Okay, so for the 40 simple skills, is the book designed so you have to do like skill 1, skill 2, skill 3, skill 4, or can you do it interchangeably?
They're while I refer back and forth to one, I said, like you learned in skill 1. You can start off anywhere in there. It's not. I would prefer that you start off in the first 2, so you have to know that you want to be a leader and that you have some sort of a vision. But beyond that, and as I use it in the coaching business, I don't start at the beginning with it and take them through it. By using an assessment, I use an emotional intelligence assessment, and by interviewing people, I can see where they have some areas for improvement. And then I can go to the book if I want to use it and say, okay, read this next time and come and we'll talk about it. So you can go anywhere you want in it that you feel, like look at a table of contents. So ask yourself, there's something I think I need to know more about it, and go to it. And it's very quick.
Is there any particular skill of the 40 that you find your clients or people that read the book that they sort of kind of hone on, or like, number 5 was just that really got to me? Or
in fact, oddly enough, I asked some of my clients a very similar question. And one of them was listening, asking questions and listening. They found really important after they've gone through the process. If you think about people that you've worked with before and you're talking to them, are they really listening? Are you and then as a person, as leader, are you listening to what people are saying and recognizing that it has some importance? My clients have found that that's important. The other thing they found out was leading by example, an imperative, really. I saw a picture at one time of a wagon with people pulling the wagon, and one of them, the boss, was sitting in the wagon, say, yeah, go that way. And the other one, the boss, was out front leading them in the pulling of this wagon. And so leading by example is hugely important, especially when you're trying to develop people. So
leading by example.
Sure.
And do you find, from just the way you observe leaders and the way you kind of assess some of your clients, would you say that that's one of the things that a lot of people don't do? They don't lead by example?
I think so. I think that, when you see a lot of people who haven't had any development or motivation in those areas, they probably don't do that. So it's one of those skills. Some people may have it. They may have, not innately, but they may have stumbled along to realize that they can't sit in the office and make things happen. They've got to get out and get around. I had one boss in one of the first companies I worked for, never got out of his office, ever. He'd post signs around the building, but he would never get out of the office. That doesn't work.
So what's next?
Two things, actually. Most of my clients, or not most of them, but a good number of them are entrepreneurs, and I had one of them tell me the other day when we were talking about this book. He says, some things I think you need to reword things to reflect an entrepreneurial point of view. And I thought about that, and I asked him some questions. So what I'm going to do, hopefully by the end of the year, is come out with a small, not a version necessarily, but a very small book. I was going to do it in a pocketbook size, but you can't distribute those. It has to be a certain size, so it's going to be a little bit smaller than this book and very much thinner, and it's going to have 15 things in it, and I'm going to have some entrepreneurial notes in there. And I did it for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to have something that was quick and easy to refer to. Didn't cost much, if at all. And if I want to give them away, they're easy things to give away. And it follows a path very similar to this one. Does not have the examples, does not have the questions and the other things that are in it. So it's a very quick look at things, but it will have an entrepreneurial note in almost every chapter to differentiate their special needs. Because, for example, when you're looking at a vision as an individual in a company, it's purposeful, it's out there. But if you change your position and you become the entrepreneur, that vision gets much bigger, much more important. And some of the problems that risks, for example, are much greater with entrepreneurs because they've got all their money in the pile, and their livelihood is there. Whereas if you're embedded in an organization, yeah, okay, I'll take a risk, but I won't lose everything. So entrepreneurs have some more challenges. And so that was sponsored by my clients, and so I'll do that. I may, next year, I'm contemplating a slight revision, so I may incorporate some of those things. Don't know yet, but the smaller book is meant to be quicker and have some entrepreneurial content to it.
Well, we're really looking forward to when that is being released. So as we wrap up, for our viewers that are watching, from the 40 Simple Skills from your book, if there is one kind of core skill that they should at least focus on or at least start with, do you have one in mind that they could at least start with to begin the journey?
With, assuming you have the desire to be a leader and you have a vision, a core one. I think that I would jump into emotional intelligence, and aside from empathy, there's relationship building. If in order to be successful on anything that you do, you're going to have people involved. And developing those relationships is really important. And so if I had to pick out one, I think it was build relationships within your organization and outside your organization as well.
Great. And for those who want to follow you and to get more information about the book, about your leadership principles, they can go to www.wolfleadership.com.
Yes.
And your email address is mfarlow@wolfleadership.com. Mike, thank you so much for stopping by. We're looking forward to the book that's coming out later on in the year. We're looking forward to staying in touch with you.
Great. Thank you very much.
And thank you for tuning in. The book, Leaders Are Made, Not Born, 40 Simple Skills to Make You the Leader You Want to Be, is available at www.forbookloversonly.com. That's www.forbookloversonly.com. And while you're there, please join our Book Lovers Club. We have a lot of great and exciting things coming down the pike for all of our book lovers, special book buying opportunities that are not available to the general public, and we let you know about great authors like Dr. Farlow. My name is Rob Brown, your internet television host and chief book lover, and this is For Book Lovers Only Television, where if you love books, we have a home for you. Take care. I'll see you next time.